Salutations, respected viewers. I am George from Ireland, and this video is about whether or not Prince Charles should become king, because one of my numberless adoring fans requested that one in particular. So, Prince Charles, he is the Prince of Wales, the Duke of Rothesay, the Earl of Carrick, Lord of the Isles, the Duke of Cornwall. He's got a number of titles, but he's usually known by his highest title, the Prince of Wales. Since Edward I, the eldest son of the monarch, has had the title of Prince of Wales, as in the son of the King of England, or subsequently the King of the United Kingdom. Obviously, read Queen for that when the reigning monarch is female. And don't believe that myth about Edward I saying, "Oh, Welsh people, I'll give you a prince who can speak not a word of English," because his infant son couldn't speak any language at that stage. Anyway, that's not why Prince of Wales has the title Prince of Wales. So Prince Charles is born in November 1948, when his mother, the current Queen Elizabeth II, was a lowly princess. So his parents are second cousins once removed. So Prince Charles, he was born in Buckingham Palace. He spent most of his life in London. Sometimes he was in Windsor, obviously going every August to Balmoral, a tradition that his great-great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria, had started in 1861, Balmoral in North Britain. So he went to a prep school called Cheam near London. Now, surprisingly, he was the first generation to go to school because his mother had private tutors. His father went to Gordonston, but the British royal family, they did not go to school until that time. So then he went to Gordonston School, where his father, Prince Philip, had been. Prince Philip was born in Greece. He belongs to the Greek royal family. The Greek royal family are a scion of the Danish royal household. And his father is related to several royal families, as indeed is his mother. So Prince Charles, he loathed Gordonston. He's very open about that. You can see a 1980s documentary about Gordonston. It was Prince Charles's younger brother, Prince Edward, says frankly that his brother abominated Gordonston and called it hell. So why go to Gordonston? The obvious choice would be Eton, the most illustrious school in the realm, and actually one of his cousins had been there. But no, it was to be Gordonston. Not quite sure why. Toughen them up, more outward bound. The British media by the 60s were less deferential. Time was they would never have intruded on privacy, never have published anything that would reflect any discredit on the royal family. But by the 60s, they were pushing boundaries and beginning to do that. So he went to Gordonston, I suppose, keep links with Germany. It's founded by a German Jewish refugee, Dr. Kurt Hahn, who later converted to Christianity, but that's that. So it was all into sports and sailing and things like that. Maybe not make him so, how to put it, effete. Remember, he's got a sister 2 years younger than him, Princess Anne. She went to West Heath School, if I got that right, an all-girls school. Not sure if it even exists anymore. And he's got younger brother Andrew, born in 1960, and the younger brother than that, Edward, born in 1964. So Prince Charles, he did his time at Gordonston. He took various A-levels. He got quite modest grades, a B and a D, and he took it to A-levels. But back in the 60s, A-levels were a very different matter. If you don't know what they are, A stands for advanced levels. Your school-leaving exam in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland is called A-levels. In Scotland, usually they're called higher levels, a completely different system. However, Gordonston doesn't do the Scottish system. And then he went to work at Geelong Grammar School in Australia. So they took Britishers who were 18 or 19 to work there for 2 terms, helping out like as an assistant to the housemaster. And that's what the Prince of Wales did. Sorry, he wasn't Prince of Wales at that stage, actually. To foster links with Australia. Remember, the Queen, she's Queen of Australia, Queen of New Zealand, Queen of the Solomon Islands, Queen of, I can't even think where, Queen of Papua New Guinea, Queen of Belize, Queen of Barbados, Queen of Bahamas, Queen of Jamaica, Queen of Grenada, and so forth. And that mattered probably more in the 60s than it does now. It was not less controversial. So he did that. I don't know if he acquitted himself admiralty. I've not heard of any complaints about it. And then he went up to Trinity College, Cambridge. And at Cambridge University, Trinity is considered one of the most exalted colleges, where he read history. Apparently at school, one of his schoolmasters had said to him, "Oh, you ought to be better at history. After all, it's all about your family, isn't it?" And some of the schoolboys said it was difficult to treat him as an equal. I mean, how do you cope with him when his mother's on the banknotes? His mother's face is on every piece of money. Well, there's famously a time when they went on a cruise. Boys, and nowadays girls, at Gordonstoun have to sail boats, really sail them, as in doing the sails, not just out for a nice sail one summer's afternoon, but sail for like about a week. And they dock sometimes, they go into port, and as all good sailors, they look for the local bar, and he and his friend had a drink when they were underage, and they were busted by a journalist from the Sun tabloid. That was that. It was Pope was the surname of the other boy involved. Splash for the media. So it was an early and rude introduction to media intrusion for Prince Charles. So he was at Cambridge, and allegedly he popped his cherry with the daughter of the Chilean ambassador, because that was the thing. People can say anything, and nobody's going to gainsay these salacious rumours about Prince Charles. So he simply doesn't deny these things. So he finished his time at Cambridge. He got a 2:2 degree, which is almost so-so. And then he joined the Royal Navy, because there was an expectation that all members of the royal family, male members, should serve before the colours. So he donned the Queen's uniform. He went to Dartmouth, which is the Royal Naval College, to train as a Royal Naval Officer. So he had a substantive rank, and I can't remember what that was, it's quite low. And then he had his honorary rank, because as a member of the royal family, he'd be whatever honorary, some other position. His actual rank is how he actually served. And I remember Prince Andrew talking about this, how, your senior officer in the Royal Navy will treat him two different ways. Speaking to him in his honorary rank, it has to be very deferential. But when it comes to his substantive rank, his senior officer might tear him a new one and give him a dressing down if he's performing his duties to a substandard level. Anyway, so Prince Charles, he went off to the Caribbean, and he spent some time with Royal Naval duties there. These Caribbean countries, the former colonies, they just become independent. They didn't have navies of their own, substantial ones anyway. So that was that. He in the early 70s was a very eligible bachelor, but considered him far too young to get married. He met a young lady called Camilla Shand, who was from an upper class family, not actually an aristocratic family. She was born the year before Prince Charles. So that's some sort of liaison. And the rumour was that she'd lost her maidenhood to I don't know whom. There's a famous photo of them chatting at a polo match. That was that. He went off to the Caribbean, and he came back a year later. And he found that this Camilla Shand was engaged. Well, that was that. Had to look elsewhere. Was he going to marry her? I suspect not, because, he was in his early 20s, unsure of himself, too early to commit. Was she suitable? Ideally, a prince would marry a princess. Should be from a Protestant country, or someone who convert to Protestantism. Which are the Protestant monarchies? They're only the Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. Not many princesses there, unmarried, right age, who he likes and she likes him. So what you going to do? Now, it's not a law. He doesn't have to marry a princess. And the German royal houses had all been abolished. I don't just mean the imperial house, but the Grand Dukes and so on, those are already gone. Should be an officially recognised monarchy. So that doesn't leave anyone else, really. So probably from an aristocratic family, as in the daughter of the Duke of this or the Earl of that. Again, that's not a law, but that was an expectation. We're looking way back to the 70s, much more class stratified era. We've become a more egalitarian society, partly because of the mistakes that the royal household made since then. So he was having a good time, sowing his wild oats. He was a bit of an old fogey, like reading Lawrence van der Post novels, that celebrated South African writer, and he liked doing his carousing at country house parties. Be a little bit old-fashioned, wearing dinner jackets. He liked shooting on grouse moors, a sort of countryside person, always into conservation and things like that. But anyway, then his beloved uncle, great uncle rather, was Lord Mountbatten, as in that's Prince Philip's uncle, because Prince Charles, he was very young when both his grandfathers had died. 1952, his maternal grandfather had died, and then he would have been, oh my goodness, how old? 3.5. So Lord Mountbatten, his great uncle, was the one he considered his grandfather figure. 1979, Lord Mountbatten was murdered by the IRA. and Prince Charles was 30 at that time. So that may have reminded him of his mortality and hurry up. Perhaps his parents are saying, Charles, you got to grow up. You got to settle down. Who are you going to marry? Your sister, Anne, she married at the age of 21. You're 30. I know boys marry a bit older, but come on, do the right thing. So apparently he proposed to Amanda Knatchbull, who was his second cousin, and she turned him down. So 1980, he's casting around for a suitable candidate. Well, what about Earl Spencer's daughter? Earl being a noble title, not being a boy's name. Well, he was quite close in age to one of Earl Spencer's daughters, and suppose he had a dalliance with her a few years earlier. That didn't go anywhere. She married somebody else. Well, there was that Lady Diana Spencer. At that stage, she was 18. Lady Diana Spencer was only 1 year younger than Prince Andrew. Some people thought she might have been a suitable bride for Prince Andrew. That's Prince Charles' younger brother. But anyway, he was at some country house party. He'd first met her when she was 16, thought she was alluring then, but too young to consider. 18 is a different matter. Began a relationship with her, invited her to Balmoral that summer, where the press photographers snapped her, and that was that. And then he asked her father's permission, may I propose to your daughter? Did it the old-fashioned way. This is the royal family. They're as traditional as you can get. Then he popped the question to her, but I think he insisted that she think about it. I think she was going on holiday to Australia for 2 weeks and come back and tell me. So that was that. And then later it was revealed that he hadn't called her for that whole 2 weeks. Anyway, I don't want to go into his marriage, but he married her. Okay, fairy tale wedding turned out to be a disastrous marriage. Perhaps often the case. Supposedly he had an Australian mistress as well, known as Kanga, as in kangaroo. In fact, she was married to somebody else. An aristocrat popped out 2 babies, made her a more suitable mistress because there's no way he could marry her. And if she did fall pregnant by him and gave birth to a baby, everyone would assume that her husband was the father of this child, not the Prince of Wales. So he's done things like set up the Prince's Trust to try and help people who've had difficulties in their lives, who've been unemployed, who've been homeless, who've been drug addicts and so on. In the late 70s, he bought a country estate, Highgrove, which he owns personally. They're not things which are publicly owned, which the royal family is allowed to use. He owns that. Supposing the monarchy was abolished, he would still own Highgrove, a 20-minute drive from Camilla Parker Bowles. Remember that Camilla Shand married a Mr. Andrew Parker Bowles, so she became Camilla Parker Bowles. It's in Gloucestershire, the west of England, so that they could, by the early 80s, they'd resumed their affair. So shan't go too much into his marriage. But there was that infamous 1995 interview he gave to David Dimbleby that summer. David Dimbleby, that renowned BBC journalist, younger brother of Jonathan Dimbleby and son of Richard Dimbleby. And David Dimbleby asked him, Your Royal Highness, were you faithful to your wife? And he said, yes, of course, until it became clear that my marriage was irreparably broken down. And so Prince Charles didn't spell it out. It didn't say, I committed adultery. But the inference everyone drew from that was that he had been unfaithful to Princess Diana, because he said he was faithful until it became clear that his marriage was irretrievably broken down. The implication was unmissable. So that was a tacit admission. And in the half-hour-long interview, that's the phrase everybody zeroed in on. And some people applauded him for his honesty. He certainly didn't lie. Others felt he should have maintained a diplomatic silence. And then obviously his then estranged wife hit back and gave her own interview to Martin Bashir, saying there were always 3 of us in this marriage. It was a little crowded. There she was, doe-eyed, coquetting at the camera. Her mascara didn't run despite her tears. It made me swoon. Anyway, so he was deeply unpopular in the late 90s, and some people were saying that they should even skip a generation. He shouldn't succeed. It should go straight to Prince William, who was then a teenager. And Camilla Parker Bowles was abominated when she's recognised in her local supermarket. She was pelted with fruit. She was the Wicked Witch of the West Country, things like that. So she went into hiding. If she ever went into a party where he was going to be there, she'd go in the boot of the car so that the paparazzi couldn't snap her. Life was pretty unpleasant for her. She was getting absolutely excoriated in the press. But Prince Charles, no, you just carry on regardless. As Prince Harry revealed, Prince Charles says just don't read the newspapers, because it really gets to him that he tries to do his duty. He realized some people look up to him, rightly or wrongly. He didn't create the royal family. He didn't set up this institution that exists. Okay, he's born to do this. That is his duty. He tries to do it to the best of his ability. And not everyone's going to like you. You simply have to accept that. You just do your best and don't let it get you down when you get some very hostile coverage. So he just carries on. So I think Prince Charles has done reasonably well, and he is sincere. He cares about things. I mean, he's published his book, A Vision of Britain Against Modern Architecture. I think he interferes too much, like writing all these black spider letters they say to the press about to the Prime Minister about this or that. We should care more about rural communities, trying to save pubs. What else has he done? Meeting AIDS victims like Princess Diana did. Obviously, he's been to so many countries, saying that, he wants to be the Prince of Faiths, not just of faith, and that includes Muslims. An odd thing to say for a self-confessed adulterer. What's the penalty for adultery in Islam? Things like that. So it's saying that the British government should only buy British products. Well, excuse me, you're going to be the head of state of Australia too, and Canada too. You should buy their products as well. But he still buys German cars, so practice what you preach. Global environmental citizen. He got that award after An Inconvenient Truth came out. He flew to the United States with several staff to receive the award from Al Gore. Well, save the environment, don't fly. Offset your carbon emissions. Are you carbon neutral? Are you planting enough trees? I don't think so. Telling the National Health Service to use homeopathic remedies, and public money is wasted on this nonsense. He's said to hold George III in high regard. George III, regarded by some as a disastrous monarch, certainly in the early days. I know there was great injustice under George III. That was the era, that was the 18th century, where slavery existed almost everywhere. But it's not the racist policies that he's advocating for. George III tried. Wrong-headed he may have been, very wrong-headed, but he was an active, zealous monarch. And the Prince of Wales, I've got to hand it to him, he cares. He makes an effort. Too much, perhaps. That's why he keeps poking his nose in. But I remember when he turned 70 last November, there were these documentaries about him saying, I'm not that stupid. I'll be different as a monarch. I know I have to keep stum. You just got to keep your opinions to yourself. The trouble is we now know his opinions because he's always blabbering his mouth off what he thinks here and there. Not in a party political way. Before he went up to Cambridge, it was clear to him he was not allowed to join any political club, things like that. But I think he's often unwise and puts his foot in it like that. But even David Blunkett, a former Labour cabinet minister, said, come on, as Prince of Wales, you've got to do something else, you just go mad. And Prince Charles was trying to persuade David Blunkett to bring back grammar schools. Okay, maybe you disagree with him or you think he's got the wrong idea, but he's making an effort. What should he be doing? Well, as one Labour MP said, a monarch should be seen and not heard, and perhaps the rest of the royal family as well, not to be voicing their opinions about this and that. So, however strongly held these are, and there's a great tenacity of belief with him, he ought not vocalise his views, since that will get up some people's noses. So Prince Charles, no one's had a better apprenticeship for the job. He's been hanging on forever to get it. Remember Juan Carlos of Spain, he stood down in favour of his son, Felipe VI, and he said, I don't want my son to have to wait forever like Carlos, as in Charles. I think that's true. He's been, since 1952, he's been the heir apparent. So he's been the longest serving heir apparent ever. So I think it would be unfair to him to make the old boy have to wait for decades and then not give him the prize at the end of the day. His reign might be a short one. Remember, he's only 22 years younger than his mother, and men generally die younger than women. He does seem to have a very healthy lifestyle. He has never been overweight. Think of all the banquets, all the very delectable repasts that have been served up to him, and he's never gorged himself. As Tony Blair revealed, in Balmoral, he noticed the royal family ate very little. Tony Blair, who is lean himself. So there we are. I think, he knows the role backwards. He's accepted on the diplomatic scene. Yes, he's had his stumbles, but even the Commonwealth has already accepted him as head of the Commonwealth. It might have been someone like Nelson Mandela, obviously he's several years dead, or some other global statesman, but nobody has got his recognition and nobody's got his kudos. So, I think he will be a decent monarch. He just needs to watch his step.